zoning board stuff. I'm ready. Ready as I'll ever be.
Mic's on, please. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act of 1975, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided. If any member has reason to believe this meeting is being held in violation of this act, they should state so at this time. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Werner?
Here.
Mr. Venuto?
Here.
Mr. Ledwin?
Here.
Mrs. Notch? Here. Ms. Sheehan? Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. Zexer?
Here.
Mr. Cataldo? Mr. Bodnar?
Here.
Thank you.
Our agenda tonight includes a section on general questions and comments. I wasn't tuned into the fact that we're adding that to our agenda. I'm not sure it's appropriate to have public questions and comments for a quasi-judicial board. It's on our agenda, so we're going to do it, but I don't want to imply that I think it's necessarily a good idea because we're supposed to decide applications. We're not a planning board. We don't have general master plan discussions. We don't have, informal meetings. We are a zoning board. So the risk of someone coming up and making comments that impact your decision without notice to the people that are the owners of that property or the applicants makes me very concerned. So if someone feels strongly that we should have that on our agenda, I need to do some research on that because I think it's dangerous ground. I just don't want to, it's on there now, so it's on there, so we got to do it. We don't have to, but we're going to do it. But I don't want that to be something that I implied that I think it's a good idea. I got to think about that some more. So open to the public, and if anybody wants to speak, you're going to get a warning about what you can and can't talk about. But you're welcome to say what you intend to talk about before you say it. So, go ahead.
Okay.
For a motion to open the public. No one's afraid to make the motion, but you can make the motion. Go ahead.
All right. Motion to open to the public for general questions and comments.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Zetzger. Seconded by Mr. Bodnar.
Okay, roll call. Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Bodnar?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so do we have anyone that wishes to speak at this time? Okay, seeing none, it's closed. So our first resolution is for Lisa Castleton, 217 Perry Street. Can we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
A motion by Mr. Venuto,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Ledwin. Roll.
Thank you. Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
This was for Perry Street?
Yes.
No.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Bodnar?
Abstain.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the next resolution is for the Bassett Family LLC, 701 Kearney Avenue. Can we have that motion?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Zetzer,
I'll second.
second by Mrs. Notch. Roll call?
Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Bodnar?
Abstain.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Thank you.
And our third resolution is for Cape Home Investment LLC. And that is 401 Pittsburgh Avenue. Can we have that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Venuto,
Second?
seconded by Mr. Zetzer. Roll.
Thank you, Mr. Lewin.
Yes.
Mrs. Notch.
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Mr. Zexer.
Yes.
Mr. Bodnar.
Abstain.
Mr. Venuto.
Yes.
Mrs. Werner.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, our first application tonight is Valerie Allen, 604 Reading Avenue, for variance relief, hardship, and substantial benefit.
Good evening, board members. My name is Lindsay Newcomb from the law firm of Monzo Catanese Delalis, here on behalf of Valerie Allen on the application for 604 Reading Avenue. It's block 1121, lot 15. With me tonight, I have Valerie Allen and Jerome Maddox, the owners of the property, as well as Joe Scarpa, who will be testifying as our expert tonight. I don't know if you want to swear them in now.
Each of you, please raise your right hand. I'm also going to swear in our board engineer, Craig Hurlis. Do each of you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
So the property is an undersized lot in the R2 zoning district, which is currently developed with a 3-bedroom, single-family dwelling. The applicant obtained zoning and construction permits to add an addition at the rear of the property. The new construction does not require any variance relief, and construction is currently underway with approvals in place. However, in 1998, the prior property owner obtained approval from this board to allow the front porch to encroach 3 feet towards the property line. So the setback would have been 22 as opposed to 25 feet. Because of the non-conforming front yard setback, retaining the porch, or reconstructing the porch, actually, requires variance relief by this board for, again, a 3-foot reduction of the front yard setback. The lot size is also a pre-existing nonconformity that we don't believe is exacerbated by this application. Joe, with that, I'd like to ask our expert some questions. Joe, would you mind qualifying yourself for the board?
Yes, absolutely. I'm licensed in New Jersey and PA as an architect. I'm a graduate of Drexel University and a Bachelor's of Architecture. I've testified multiple times inland and along the New Jersey coast. Furthermore, I've also testified to the Cape May Historical Preservation Committee as well. I've practiced architecture for 25-plus years now, and I'm happy to say as Director of Architecture at the Highland Design Group, this is my anniversary of 3 years there.
Will the board accept Joe as an expert?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I ask for the last name, Joe's last name, please? I'm sorry, I did not hear the last name. and It's not in the packet.
Joseph Scarpa, that's S-C-A-R-P-A.
Thank you.
You get distracted from, are you an architect or an architect and engineer?
I'm an architect,
Okay, so we'll qualify you as an architect.
absolutely. Thank you.
Joe, can you explain to the board the existing conditions on the site, including the zoning district and the house that's currently there?
Yes, sure. As we know, it's on 604 Reading Avenue. It fronts on that. We are in an R2 zone district, which allows single-family dwelling. This is a 3-bedroom home in there. The lot is, right now, the only lot between the 2 corners. That means that the house, again, fronts on Reading Avenue between Virginia Avenue and Ohio Avenue. The other 2 corners would be on that Virginia Avenue and Ohio Avenue. And then currently, as mentioned previous, this is an existing undersized lot.
And would you go through your plans for the proposed construction for the board?
Yeah, sure. These exhibits are not new. These exhibits you already have. They're just, I brought them in for help with trying to illustrate this. So currently, the residence is a single-story, 3-bedroom with a front porch and a rear patio. The proposed design will be to add another story on top of them. The addition is a 2nd-story addition and that will have another bedroom and a bathroom. So the total will be a four-bedroom home. The front porch will become larger, and the patio in the rear will reduce in size during that construction.
So, as I stated, an application was previously approved in 1998 to allow the front porch to encroach 3 feet into the front yard setback, correct?
Correct.
And the construction that's actually being completed on the home is all in the rear, but because we want that front porch to remain in the setback, we need to come in for variance approval, correct?
Yes, correct.
And again, the lot is already, is undersized, which is an existing condition that's not being exacerbated by this application, correct?
Correct.
Variance relief is requested under the C2 criteria. Can you go through that standard for the board?
Yes, so Section 70C2, it requires us to weigh the positive and negative criteria, and where the benefits in advancing the purposes of the MLUL outweigh the negative impacts of the zone plan, and the variance can be granted.
And what purposes of municipal land use law will be advanced by the granting of this variance?
So we're looking at Section I of that section, to promote a desirable visual environment through creative development, technique, and good civic design arrangement.
And can you elaborate for the board how this porch is going to be more, I'll call it aesthetically pleasing, and how it will promote a desirable environment, visual environment?
Absolutely. So I know this elevation may be a little, again, you have all this elevations, but existing-wise, the home, while it's larger towards the rear, appears to be like a rancher with one single gable that is made up of that front porch that exists right now. What we're proposing in that design is to incorporate multiple gables that offset the facade, and we're also incorporating more materials into that facade to break up the design and fit into the context of the streetscape. Currently, the streetscape does have this design, which was part of the impact of what we were kind of going for when we designed it. So if we look around on that street and the adjacent streets, you'll find these porches with these multiple gables. And the second story is one larger gable to make it kind of fit more into the context of the streetscape rather than be a large two-story building. And it is my feeling that this adds to the appeal of that streetscape.
And where the porch will sit, if this board grants approval tonight, is obviously consistent with the streetscape around it, correct?
Yes, and furthermore, one of those adjacent lots that fronts on Ohio, I believe, has a side yard porch that is elongated the whole thing. So it kind of contexts into that long front porch, and it is very close to our existing porch that exists now. That's at the 22-yard setback.
And when you talked about the criteria for the variance relief, you mentioned the negative criteria. Can you set forth for the board how we meet that criteria?
Yes. So, excuse me. Okay, for the C2 variances, you need to satisfy the negative criteria, no substantial detriment to the public good, and no substantial impairment to the intent and the purpose of the zone plan or zoning ordinance. The porch already exists, so there won't be any negative impact associated with it remaining. Again, the two front corner lots, no view adjacent property is impacted. Again, they're both fronting on the adjacent streets. And I've already went in to explain how it affects the streetscape. Relief is de minimis in nature, no impact to the zoning plan because standard at residential property to the front yard.
And it would also be fair to say that in 1998, the board in fact agreed with all of those conclusions by granting the variance, correct?
Absolutely. And the porch already exists, so.
And per one of the engineer's comments in the memo, can you speak briefly about landscaping and vegetation on site?
Yeah, so we understand a street tree is required as part of the application. The drawings you have does not show a street tree. It's something we would add. Let me switch over to that. I would like to indicate where I propose that street tree to be located. So, this is ready. Right now are lines that, utility lines that connect to our house, angle across the street where the utility lines run. So I would like to put a street tree closer to the driveway side, to try to avoid those trees. And a type that I would propose for this is I would think a red maple would be nice, but any of the KMA's list of city trees would be fine. And furthermore, currently the house has no shade trees on site, so we're not really going to change or have any effect to the existing site by adding anything more, only better the site.
I believe that's all that I have from Joe. Obviously, the applicants are here to answer any questions that the board has, although I was not planning on eliciting any testimony from them. But to the extent you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Okay. As of this time, does any board member have any questions?
Just like to point out there's a typo on the rider. It says 604 Kearney.
Oh, I apologize for that, if
Just
that's
to
the
make it
case. Yes, it is absolutely not that
It's
address.
604 Kearney Avenue. Instead of 604 Reading.
Sorry about
just-
that. It is Reading.
Where is that, Mr. Walsh, is that on this plan? Where is that?
No, it's
On
on
the,
the narrative that's attached.
Oh, in the narrative? Thank you.
All right, if there's no other questions, we'll open it up to Craig's report.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to summarize my report dated January 31st, 2024. This is a project located in the R2 low-medium density residential district. You've heard testimony from the applicants indicating they're proposing an addition to the single-family dwelling, increases from 3 to 4 bedrooms, does increase the floor area, however, it is conforming. And I'll just roll right into my completeness review. There were 2 waivers that were asked for. Based on the nature of this application, I did support those waivers, including the landscaping plan provided, and I have another comment later on. They just verify that the existing vegetation will be preserved in addition to the proposed street tree. So based on that, those recommendations, I did support deeming the application complete. You've heard testimony from the applicants indicating that it is an existing undersized lot, and they're requesting a building setback variance. So the lot size requirement in the district is 7,500 square feet. All of the lots surrounding it are improved. The existing lot size is 6,250 square feet. The setback variance from Reading Avenue that they're requesting, the requirement of the zone is 25 feet. Their setback is 22 feet, so it's encroaching 3 foot into the required setback. So that's the variance that you have to consider. The applicant has given you the positive criteria under the C2 test and standard. The detriments could be impacts to the streetscape, light, air, and open space. They're typically things that we look at when there's an encroachment into a yard. So those are the things that the board can consider and weigh and balance their decision. And I'll roll right into my general review comments that are on page 4 or 5. I've asked under item number 1, the zoning table should be revised to reflect the comments in this review memo. Item number 2 is our stormwater review. They did provide a grading and drainage plan. We did find that design acceptable, and there's no issues with that. They also have to comply with the minimum stormwater management and grading requirements. That is a standard condition that we affix to all applications that we consider. 4, there is a street tree requirement. We give the applicant the leeway to cite that tree. The only time we get involved is if it impacts clear sight triangle or utilities. So long as it doesn't do that, wherever you place on the plan, so long as it's within the right-of-way, we will accept. Okay, landscaping and vegetation plan, we would just ask that a note be provided on the plan that they verify that the existing landscaping is going to be protected and preserved. 6 is our standard condition that after the improvements are done, we evaluate the sidewalk to make sure none of it is damaged during construction, and it's going to be, any damaged sidewalk we replace to the satisfaction of the board engineer. 7 is a standard condition that they have to provide the inspection escrow, and the certificate of occupancy is tied to the acceptance of those improvements that the board grants. Item number 8 is our standard condition that they have to comply with the requirements and recommendations of the Shade Tree Commission, Fire Department, and Public Works Department. We did receive the Fire Department review dated 2/2/24. They recommended approval. Public Works recommended approval dated 2/1/24, and the Shade Tree Commission recommended approval dated 2/13/2024, and there were no comments within those recommendations, so I don't see any issues with that. 9 is our standard condition that they have to comply with any and all other state, county, and local approvals. Item 10 is for informational purposes, but this project is not located in the historic district, so there's no HPC approval required. And item number 11, they have to comply with any and all applicable affordable housing requirements at the time of approval, issuance of building permits, or certificate of occupancy is applicable. And then finally, should the board grant approval, the applicant is required to submit revised sets that comply with the conditions that the board sets to the board engineer for review and approval. That is a summary of my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions the board has.
Anyone have any questions?
Can I ask a question, not for Mr. Hurlis, but to council or the applicant? According to the plans, the proposed, I'll address this to the architect, the proposed porch runs the full length of the house, 34, I believe 34 feet. What was the length of the prior porch?
All right, just bring me to memory, I'm going to turn to that page. So the existing is 14'7". Now, obviously, it had chamfered corners prior. Now it's just straight across. And again, this is offset. The rest of the porch is back at the 25-foot setback.
Okay. But under the proposal, it's going to go the full,
The full length, full line of the house, which will be about 34, 4 1/4, so 34.
okay.
I'll speak here. Yes, it's fine. So the original existing porch that was 3 feet into the front yard setback, it was 14'7". That's 14'7". It did have chamfered corners, so it wasn't the full out. The new proposed goes across the whole front of the building, which is 34'4". But the portion that is newer is at the 25-yard setback line. So we still have a little bit of offset to the porch.
So I think, just to clarify, the portion of the porch that wasn't previously existing is going to sit at the 25-foot line. The portion that existed before, that sits at the 22-foot line, is the only portion that's proposed to remain past the setback.
Correct.
Okay.
Why?
Why?
Oh, why? Because, well, it's existing. We feel it fit. One, we felt that it was existing, so we felt that it already was part of that fabric of that streetscape. And furthermore, while we're adding more porch at the 25-yard setback, it again gives that layering to the facade that makes it more appealing and be able to give it.
More visually appealing to have it not straight across, but rather to.
Correct, yes, to step back.
My why wasn't so much why isn't the whole thing just, but it's just
Yeah, I like that, and I'm sure everybody would agree that that stepping of the facade makes it more interesting and appealing.
The original variance said that the porch was only to be enclosed by railings and roof, not by walls. this will be partially enclosed by screens. Is that going to make any difference? Are we overriding that variance? Okay.
The proposal is to enclose that portion with a screen. So, I mean, by coming here tonight, I think we're kind of inherently asking for relief that while it's similar to what was previously approved in terms of the setback, that condition obviously is not what we're proposing tonight. I would note for the board that the lot coverage and floor area ratio are far less than what is otherwise permitted on this lot. So while there is a slight encroachment for this specific portion of the porch into the front yard setback, we are still, we are at 38% lot coverage where 40% is permitted, and in floor area ratio, 0.4 is permitted, and we're at 0.27. So in terms of, protecting the space and the streetscape, I believe that we're consistent with that.
Can I just try to summarize that in a sentence, because I want to get in the resolution. I didn't appreciate that earlier. So it's going to be a screened porch,
That's correct.
and the part that is already there is going to stay at the distance from the street that it presently is,
Correct.
but the balance of the porch is going to meet the, I think you're saying 20-yard, but I think you mean 20-foot setback, right?
It's actually 25.
It's going to be the 25-foot setback,
That's correct.
right? So we have a little jog back.
Yes.
So the new construction actually isn't in the front setback.
Correct.
Correct, yes.
All
The
of,
only thing you're doing in the setback is adding a screen.
correct. We are screening in the previously approved porch, but because of the way that Cape May requires you to come in when there are non-existing conditions on site, even though everything new that we are proposing is fully compliant with zoning, we're still required to come and get that front yard setback variance.
The plan says they're reconstructing it. So you're tearing it down and rebuilding it new.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And that,
And we're enclosing it
if you
by
want
way of
proposing it,
screens.
I'm not sure it requires a variance, to be honest with you, but that's just fine.
You're only going to enclose part of it, right? Just the half of the part. But, the whole porch will be enclosed.
I thought, that's why I misunderstood. I thought
They're-
the whole porch was going in the 22-foot area.
No.
If everything you're building is within the setbacks,
They've expanded the porch. It did have angles on it, and now they're going to square off those angles. So there is a slight increase in it. So technically, I think they do need a variance. It's very de minimis.
okay, I just want everybody to understand what they're really asking here, because I thought we passed an ordinance that said, even if you're a non-conforming structure, it's that whole Serpentelli decision, right? But we clarified, we said if there's a non-conforming structure and you're adding to a non-conforming structure, and we also made it truly not, we had the thing, first we said, if it's more than 20 years that it's been there, it's a pre-existing non-conforming structure. And if you have a pre-existing non-conforming structure and you're adding to it, and the addition that you're adding doesn't violate any setback, you don't need a variance.
So
So in my opinion, if they were keeping the porch exactly the same as it was, and the part that they were adding didn't violate any setback, then I don't think they need a variance. But they are screening it, which is different than what was permitted under the old variance. So that does, in my opinion, then require a variance. But you're also, according to Craig, it's slightly different because you are shaping it differently, so it's covering a little more space, so you do need a variance. But I just want my board to understand, basically what they're here seeking, in my opinion, is to screen in the porch, the 3 feet of the porch that's in the front setback,
Yeah.
and to whatever Craig is talking about squaring off something that's an angle.
It's about 9 square feet is what they're
Yeah.
adding.
So it's,
That's it.
I don't believe in de minimis variances, but if there was one, this is pretty close to one.
So frankly, I agree with you. We actually submitted for permits previously, and it was denied to come in before this board, which we are obviously here and happy to do. But my interpretation initially was the same as yours. So we are squaring it off, so that, I guess that's the variance, really.
Oh, the
And to
screening is
screen it
different,
in.
Because that's visually different. And if
Correct.
someone came in and objected and said, well, it's one thing if it's open, another thing if it's screened, then we could deny that
Understood,
legitimately.
understood.
All right. Well, that was- Good question. That was helpful.
Okay. Any
Good
other
question.
questions? We can open it up to anyone within 200 feet. Anyone beyond 200 feet? And seeing none, close to the public.
You guys going to discuss it? Okay. The motion that I recommend being made, although how you vote is up to you, and we always phrase it in the affirmative, is a motion to grant variances 1 and 2 on page 3 of the engineer's report, consistent with the design described before the board, subject to the conditions 1 through 12. This is presented as a C2 variance with the balancing as accurately outlined by the attorney and architect for the applicant and by your board engineer. So applying that standard, I recommend you make that motion, and how you vote is up to you. Okay? Questions? No?
Okay. Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
A second.
Motion by Mr. Venuto, seconded by Mr. Walsh. Roll call.
Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Bodnar?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Have better pictures next time. I'm looking for that house. Where's that house?
You can't find it now. The way it looks now, you can't find it.
Yeah, it was like, I'm looking, where's that
Yeah.
house? I thought maybe I was going blind. Sorry, Karen.
Okay, our next application is Thomas and Gigi Lord, 1239 New York Avenue, for variance relief, hardship, substantial benefit, and use. Everyone have their mics on, microphones on?
Hey, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Anthony Monzo from Monzo Catanese Delalis, representing the applicants Tom and Gigi Lord. With me are Tom Lord to my right. Project engineer to my far right is Lou Scheid, and the project architect to my left is Catherine Lorenz. Gigi Lord is also sitting here, and I don't intend to have her testify, but everybody at the table will testify, so if you want to swear them in, we can do that.
Okay.
Okay, if each of you will please raise your right hand, and Mr. Hurlis remains under oath. Each of you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Catherine, do you want to just pass the exhibits out so we can get them out of the way?
You want to mark the whole packet, Mr. Monzo?
They're marked individually, Rich. They're exhibits,
Just can you just tell me what they are, so I put it in here?
exhibits 1 through 7. Exhibit 1 are before and after renderings. Exhibit 2 are also before and after renderings. Exhibit 1 is from New York Avenue. Exhibit 2 are renderings from Trenton Avenue. Exhibit 3 are floor plans, proposed floor plans for the first floor and the ground floor. Thank you. Exhibit 4 are existing and proposed floor plans for the second and third floors. Exhibit 5 is a colored rendering of the site plan. Exhibit 6 is a photo of the existing garage. And Exhibit 7 is a circa 1920 aerial photograph of the area in general with an arrow pointing to where the existing home is.
You said aerial photograph?
Aerial, yes.
Okay, thanks, sir.
So this application is for variances in connection with the subject property, which is at the northwest corner of New York Avenue and Trenton Avenue. The Lord family has owned this property since 1914, over 100 years. Tom and Gigi Lord are the current owners. Before them, it was owned by their parents, Jack and Judy Lord, and some of you may remember Mr. and Mrs. Lord, who have spent many, many years here in Cape May. And Tom will give a little bit more history as well as his vision for the project and why we're here asking for the variances that are needed for this project. So the home is a 2.5-story frame dwelling along with an accessory detached garage. Photos of the property were submitted with the application package. And as you can see in those photos, the garage and also in the exhibit, in fact, you may want to just look at Exhibit 6. The garage is in very, very poor condition, and it's barely standing. And it was actually approved for demolition by the HPC, and conceptual approval, I should say. And also, they approved the replacement garage that's part of what our project plan shows tonight.
What is preliminary approval for demolition?
Conceptual.
What's conceptual?
I'm sorry, they received approval for demolition and conceptual approval. I'm sorry, conceptual approval to replace the garage.
Typing that, I'm like, I don't-
Sorry about that. And also, the entire project that we're presenting tonight was approved conceptually by the HPC, and that report was included in the reports that Karen submitted to everyone. So the home currently, and by the way, the improvements meet all the historical guidelines. The materials are original materials. Windows are all wood windows, and it's a real, it's an upgrade in accordance with the standards for contributing buildings, which this clearly is. So the existing home contains 4 bedrooms and has off-street parking for 2 vehicles. The applicant is proposing a small addition on the first floor with the main purpose of providing an elevator for the Lords to continue to live there as they age. This will be their retirement home, and they spend a significant amount of time there now. But part of the project also includes extending the dormer on the 3rd floor that will create some additional living space on the 3rd floor, plus some additional space on the 2nd floor where it's intended to be used as an office for Mr. Lord. So as a result of those additions and renovations, the habitable area will increase from 1,972 square feet to 2,517 square feet. And the increase is mainly the result of the larger rooms and the office. There's no additional bedrooms, and there's really no substantial increase in the footprint of the building except for the rear bump out, which will, again, be needed to put in the elevator. So that's basically the project. The garage itself is going to be replaced with a new structure in the same footprint. There will be a 2nd floor in the garage for storage, and this also triggers, as you can see in the application, some lot coverage increases and also floor area ratio increases, which are really the 2 main variances that we're seeking tonight. There are several setback variances, but they're, basically as a result of existing conditions. With respect to the house, those variances are triggered mainly because of the installation of gutters because the eaves are already in the setback. 4 inches of gutter just exacerbates that setback, both on Trenton Avenue and on the side yard, on the opposite side of Trenton Avenue. And there's also, because of that extension of the eave and the roof extension that's in the setback, that also triggers a setback variance. So it's building setback, it's side yard setback, and also similar variances with respect to the garage. Because it's a 5,000 square foot lot and there's improvements and increases, that also triggers a lot area variance along with lot coverage, floor area ratio, and the various setbacks. Craig also mentioned, and Mr. Scheit will address the site triangle issues, and we're not sure if that needs a variance or not, but we'll provide testimony with respect to that. So with that background, I want to just turn it over to Tom Lord so he can just give you his story and why he's doing what he's doing, and maybe a little bit of the history of the property. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Tony. Think you hear me okay? Great to meet you, and great to be here. This is a project that my wife Gigi and I have been planning for a long time, and something we're looking forward to. 1239 is a special place. It's been in our family for 4 generations. As you'll see in the aerial photograph that Tony referenced earlier, when my great-grandfather, William Montgomery, purchased it in 1914, we were our only house on the block. So we have a long family history and a lot of special memories at 1239. Like my parents, Gigi and I have a dream to spend our retirement years in our family home. Unfortunately for my parents, Jack and Judy Lord, they could not live out their retirement years because they reached a point where they could no longer handle the steps due to health conditions. So they had to move out into a single-floor home. When my parents reached that point, that was in 2009, Gigi and I were fortunate enough to buy the house and keep it in the family. Preparing for our retirement years in Cape May, as they call aging in place, is one of the main drivers behind this renovation. It includes the addition of an elevator, as Tony mentioned, so that steps will not be an issue. Although, retirement is a few years ahead of us, we've already had a need for an elevator, as I recently had total hip replacement. So we're kind of going down that path already. We will note, as you will note in the architectural design, that the elevator blends in well with the house structure, so it's not noticeable, which is important to us because we're on a corner lot. It also includes office space, which, because I plan to continue my consulting practice in retirement, and it also is a complete rebuild of the garage that's currently eyesore, as Tony alluded to, and is on the verge of collapsing. The new garage also includes a second floor for necessary storage, and we believe our neighbors are all in favor of this change. We share the plans with our immediate neighbors, and they're all in support of this. Mr. Monzo mentioned the tree next to the garage, and that's not just the tree, because that's special meaning to us and the entire Lord family, because my parents planted that tree in memory of my niece, who died when she was just 3 years old. So the tree is special important to our family's history. So we appreciate your time and consideration. We hope that our project plans we find are reasonable and not only making improvements to the streetscape, but also keeps the look and feel of the existing structure, which is important to also our family history. We believe that these improvements will allow us to fulfill our dream to retire in Cape May and keep our home in conditions that can be enjoyed for another 100 years for future generations to come. Thank you.
Tom, just one follow-up. Just because of that tree, there's really no other place to put the garage? Is that accurate?
Yes. So,
Without
yeah,
taking the tree, without removing the tree?
we had an arborist do an assessment, and if you move the tree, it will most likely die.
Thank you. Next, I have Catherine Lorenz, and she's been here
Yes.
several times, so I'm assuming the board accepts her as an expert in the
Yes.
field of architecture. So, Ms. Lorenz, can you just, we've handed out these exhibits, so if you want to just take the board through your plans and explain the exterior, the interior, and also the site improvements.
All right. A little history. I've been working in architecture for over 25 years. I've testified in numerous board meetings throughout Cape May County. I'm registered to practice architecture in New York and New Jersey. This is where I live, and I spend probably 60% of my career working in Cape May City. I thought it would be easier to look at the exhibits as opposed to the large plans. So I thought that I would go through each page with you to define what we're doing, and so that you can sort of have a visualization of what the effect will, the end result would be. When I was called to help Gigi and Tom, they expressed the fact that they wanted to have an elevator to be able to get into the house. Right now, the house is practically a story above grade, and I think every individual has a right to be able to enter their home. So I feel very strongly about adding an elevator to help them live their older and golden years in this house. But I also felt very strongly about maintaining the architectural appearance of the house. And as was noted, we have gotten HPC approval on the design. If we look at Exhibit 1, the top left hand shows you the rear before, and the top right hand shows you the rear after, or the proposed rear. You don't even know that there's an elevator there. I think that we've improved on some of the house. There is a ramp that will take you down, and I'm going to go through that in the plan, from grade down to the basement level, which will then take you up. The rear also shows the same deck, but we've added an additional deck on the top to hold air conditioning units, because this lot is somewhat small, and we thought that that would be a way to disguise the condensers. We've also added, as you'll note, on the top, a dormer that matches the other dormers around the building. And that dormer, I will explain, helps to increase the FAR, the total FAR. So if we look at the front, and we look at the front existing, and we look at the front proposed, it basically looks the same, other than the fact that we've increased the size of the dormer. But we're going to put in all new siding. We're going to repoint and repair the brick. We're going to put in new period-appropriate windows, so that this house, which is in a historic house, will last another 100 years, as Tom has said. So when you look at the house from the front, I don't think that there is any change visible, and at the rear, very little change. If we go to Exhibit 2, I've drawn the side, the Trenton side, and we have the existing house with the crepe myrtle tree and the existing garage. The garage has been approved by HPC for demolition. It's falling apart. Some big wind is going to take it soon. But you can see, and I'll have a photograph at the end, how big this crepe myrtle is. Beautiful. And it sits right up against, not right up, but it's very, very close to where the garage is. So we propose to demolish the existing garage and build a new garage, as you see on the lower portion of the building, the drawing. And it's sort of a little, we're matching the garage door, we're matching the dormers. It's sort of a mini version of the house, and I think it's really sweet. And the HPC loved it. If we look at the massing of the house on the lower portion compared to up above, we're maintaining the same shape and feel of the house. We've just pushed it out about 2 more feet. So my feeling when looking at the before and after is that we haven't made any significant change to the massing of the building. And that was also the feeling of the HPC. Now, if we go to Exhibit 3, I'm going to talk about 2 things on this one. First, I have the existing plan, the proposed first floor plan, and the ground floor plan. The ground floor plan is indicating, and that red line sort of shows you where we're pushing beyond where the building is now. It's not a whole lot. And most of it, of what we're pushing beyond the red dotted line, is so that we can add a ramp that will take us down to the basement level, and there can be an elevator that will take us up to the first and second floors. I've also indicated in sort of pink hatching, the ground floor on the right-hand side shows where the elevator is and the elevator machine room would be. Then if we look at the middle plan, we see that there's the elevator and the foyer to get in. And I just want to make note about the additional floor area ratio. On the first floor, we have increased the floor area ratio of the first floor about 120 square feet. So most of that additional floor area ratio that we have increased is because of the elevator. We have an elevator that's 6 by 6, we have a foyer that's 6 by 6. So we've added a little more space in the kitchen so that it would align with the elevator and wouldn't appear on the rear of the building as like a big bump out. So we have the ramp, which is adding a bit to the lot coverage. The ramp will be made of pavers. We are doing our best to not increase the lot coverage if we can. Additionally, if we look at proposed first floor plan, we have bumped in on the left side, we have bumped in the new addition so that we, forgetting about the gutters, we are the foundation of the building is, the new foundation of the building is within the setback that is required. On Trenton Avenue, the whole existing building does not comply to the setback. We are just aligning the building so it all looks together. It's all one side of the building. There's no floor area ratio included in the basement since that is just an entry point for the elevator and it is not habitable space. If we go to the exhibit number 4, on the left-hand side is the existing floor plan. On the, for the second floor. And then we show, again, you see the dotted line, so that shows where we're pushing out from the original building. On the second floor, we've got the elevator, and we've got the balcony that is not a real balcony. It's a place to put the condenser units as opposed to sticking them in the backyard somewhere. We have a foyer. We've added a small office. But the elevator now allows the homeowners to get from the basement to the first floor and to the second floor. And we have increased the floor area of this floor about 182 square feet. Remembering that at least 50 square feet or so of that is because of the elevator. So the area that we're increasing the floor area ratio is, in my humble opinion, not significant. If we look at the right-hand side, you will see the existing attic. The existing attic, most of that attic was below 6 foot 6 inches, except at the dormer. So most of the attic was not considered habitable space. In order to allow the Lords to have 4 bedrooms, because we've taken 1 bedroom on the second floor and made it bigger and added a small office, what we did is we increased the height of the dormers on the 3rd floor so that that could be a proper bedroom without hitting your head all the time. What we've also done, and what has been approved conceptually by the HPC, is we added a 4th dormer at the rear, which contains a bathroom. So this is an ensuite bedroom on the 3rd floor. This is where we've added probably the most FAR. We've added about 240 square feet on the 3rd floor. And that's because we've increased the dormer height so that people can, or their daughter could use this space. There is no elevator on this floor. That was given up in order to maintain the aesthetic value of the house towards the rear. If we go to exhibit number 5, this is an extremely simplistic plan. Lou, the engineer, will get into all of the numbers and lot drainages and things of that sort. But what I tried to show here is 2 things. I tried to show the garage that we're proposing on the right-hand side. And if you look at this is exhibit number 5. If you look at the right-hand side and you look at the the red dotted line, that indicates what we would be allowed to build within the existing setback requirements. You can see that what we're allowed to build would not work as a garage. So in any event, we're going to have to go for a variance for a garage anyway, number 1. Number 2 is you can see the location of the tree, which is adjacent to the existing, or now the new garage, which is in the same footprint as the old garage. This also indicates, the floor plan shows how we bumped in on the new addition so that we are within the setbacks, and it shows how we're aligning with the Trenton Avenue existing setback.
Just on the garage, if you can touch on the fact that even though it's in the same footprint, it's set back further because of the elimination of that overhang that currently exists. Is that accurate?
Yes, the garage had an overhang that was sort of like, you had a garage, and then you had a roof that overhang that was like a carport. We're removing that in order to, it also had a concrete driveway. We're removing that so that we can have pavers and try to decrease the lot coverage. Also, because this garage is we're in the existing footprint, the new garage will be fire rated and built up to any code requirements for a garage being so close to a lot line. Exhibit number 6 shows you this outstanding crepe myrtle in full bloom. And we have spoken to an arborist, Dave Parker, and he has indicated in a letter that if we were to build a garage closer to this tree, we would undoubtedly kill it, plain and simple. And then, I think you all saw the picture. It's a little blurry because it was an old picture, but this is the aerial streetscape from 100 years ago. And with the architectural improvements of this house, we're hoping it to last another 100 years. So that in a nutshell, I think distills what we're trying to do and how we're trying to accomplish that.
I have a couple questions
Yes.
on Exhibit 4.
Okay,
You indicated that, for instance, the proposed second floor increased habitable area by 182 square feet, but 50 feet of that, 50 square feet was from the elevator?
yes.
Is that-
The elevator and the foyer, you have to have a foyer to get out of the elevator, yes.
And is that same calculation applied to the first floor?
Yes,
And also the third floor, even though now it's better suited for habitation, but what's there right now?
well, right now, there is a bedroom
Okay.
that is used by their daughter, who happens to be about my height, 5 feet, so we don't have to worry about hitting our heads.
There's
So,
no
but-
bathroom.
And
But
we've
because
added the
of-
bathroom.
But because of the ceiling height, that bedroom currently is not calculated as habitable area, is that correct?
Most of it is not, yes.
I'm sorry, you can continue.
No, no.
If you can go through is there anything else you wanted to cover with respect to the plan?
Well, with regards to the exhibit, I think that sort of goes through what we're doing in a nutshell. And would you like me to go through some of these questions that you had
No,
here?
you can, just from an overall standpoint, with in your opinion, from looking at this house with the improvements from the street, how does it compare to what's there now? Is it noticeably different, other than the improvements, obviously, but if you can just elaborate on that?
Okay. The HPC has come out with new standards, and I've been familiarizing myself with this. In my opinion, I think that we're renovating an existing historic home for the future. The new addition meets all the requirements of the current and new historic design standards, and I don't think it's overwhelming. I think it keeps within the design of the original house that was built 100 years ago.
From a neighborhood, just from a neighborhood scheme, how does this home fit into the neighborhood in terms of the size, the style, the scale, and
I think,
generally?
I think it fits in well. This is a bit of an undersized lot. There are houses that are renovated across the street that are bigger. There's houses renovated down the block that are similar. So I think this fits in with these homes, there were about 20 or 25 of these homes built at the same time or about the same time, same style, and I think that this fits in very well.
I have no further questions. Is there anything else you need to add, or?
Let me just look at my note for a minute. I mean, I think I mentioned this once, but I do think we are maintaining the historic integrity of the house. But I also feel extremely, I feel it's very important to allow a homeowner access to their home. And just because this aging in place is very important to me, the ADA came out in 1993, Accessible Disabilities Act, and I think that it would be a shame to deny someone access to their home. We're trying to be good neighbors. We're building an elevator, but we're also trying to make this elevator blend in with the historic nature of the house.
Thank you. Mr. Scheit, I'd like to, I know he's been here before. Do you want him to place his credentials on the record?
I would just like him to spell his name.
I memorized it. S-C-H-E-I-D-T, last name, first name Louis, L-O-U-I-S.
And we accept you. You've
Thank
been
you.
here before.
So, Mr. Scheit, can you just first go through, I know we have 9, possibly 10 variances. So
Yes.
can you just summarize them, please?
Be happy to. The FAR, which we've been talking about, which was, I think, very well explained. In accordance with 525-52, the maximum FAR permitted for a single-family detached dwelling is .4. The applicant has proposed an increase in FAR from .394 to .503. The lot size, in accordance with 525-15B1, Table 1, the minimum lot size required is 7,500 feet, and the 5,000 square feet is existing. Lot coverage, in accordance with 525-15B2, the maximum permitted lot coverage is 40%. The applicant has proposed improvements that will increase the lot coverage to 50% from 44.8%. The building setbacks, New York side, in accordance with 525-15B1, Table 1, the minimum building setback required is 25 feet as measured to New York Avenue. The applicant has proposed a renovated covered porch that will have setbacks 7.9 feet, where 7.9 feet exist currently. The building setbacks on Trenton, in accordance with 525-15B1, Table 1 also, the minimum building requirement is 25 feet as measured to Trenton Avenue. The applicant has proposed additions at the rear of the structure of setbacks of 0.4 and 2.4 feet, measure the proposed improvements addition where 0.9 feet setback exists currently. And just to,
Can I just pause you for a second? I just want to direct your attention to the board engineer's report.
yes,
Because it's my practice, as Mr. Monzo knows, is that I take Mr. Hurlis's chart from his
yes,
document and I put it in the resolution.
yes.
So to the extent that anything you say is inconsistent with this chart, it'll become a problem later. So I just want to go over, I think as do
My-
Eve's, but the numbers
My-
you just gave for the variances are different than Craig's. So I just want to make sure that,
Slightly.
well, these are what's
My
going to go in.
understanding is that they agreed. Are they?
What did you just say? You just said something about .4 and 2 point something.
0.5 and 2.4 feet. We're 0.9 feet.
He has .5 and 2.9 feet.
Right. I was just going to say that difference is because we had to put gutters on.
Okay, what numbers go? Your variance is going to be this chart, so I'm not sure you have a hard time. I'm sure everything
No.
you're saying is accurate. I'm just
Yes.
saying that I'm going to put this chart in there, and if it's not what you want it to be, then it's a problem
Yes.
when they go to do it.
Well, I just want to add that one item on here in that when we put our numbers together, we checked the architect, Craig's numbers, they all be convergent. The one thing that was up in the air is we put a subsurface drainage system getting a little bit ahead, but we had to get the water there. And there was considerable discussion, traditionally it's to do gutters. We were trying to look at some other way. There wasn't really any other way. So that differential, the extra few inches are required for gutters. So that would be the only thing that I think we would.
It's a great explanation. I just want to know to put in the resolution. Should I change it to 2.7 or should it be 2.9?
2.4.
Yeah, I'm looking
And
at
0.5.
item 4, Craig, on your report on page 4 of 7, right? It says 0.5 feet and 2.4 feet, right? Where not 0.9 feet currently exists. Is that what you have?
2.9, right?
I would rely on the testimony. You know, often the engineering plans and architect plans are slightly off.
Correct.
The testimony is that you're proposing 2.4 feet setback to the gutter
Correct.
along.
And 0.5.
And 0.5. So that's what I would modify it.
I'll put
Strike the
2.4.
2.9 to,
That's fine. I just, the building inspector looks at the resolution and then measures it, and you're half a foot off, and then all hell breaks loose. So just make sure.
We certainly don't want hell breaking loose.
So 2.4 is what I'm going to put in the resolution. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm just,
Uh,
go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you, but
And we looked at, we're getting ahead on the drainage, looked at a number of different alternatives, but really to get water into the subsurface drainage, gutters work. The side setback, in accordance with 525-15B1, Table 1, the minimum side setback is 5 feet on each side. The applicant has proposed additions to the structure that will have setbacks of 0.0 as measured in the proposed addition where 0.4 setback exists, and that's the same situation. The garage building setback, in accordance with 525-55, detached garages are not permitted in the building setback. The applicant has proposed a new garage with setbacks of 20.2 feet where 25 is required. In the garage rear setback, in accordance with 525-55, detached garages are required to have a rear setback of 5. The applicant has proposed a new garage with a rear setback of 2.4 where 5 feet is required, a variance is required. And then the garage side setback. Detached garages are not permitted in the side setback. The applicant has proposed a new garage, new replacement garage with a side setback of 1 where 4 feet is required.
A setback of 1, you said a setback of 1.
1.0 feet, or 4 feet. And as mentioned, there's a number of reasons for this. One is a crepe myrtle that it was planted in honor of a family member. Just interesting, we have a very large crepe myrtle in our yard in a somewhat similar situation. So I certainly can relate to that. The structure is, don't like to put anything down, but the structure is in very poor condition, and not only will it be replaced, it'll be fireproofed, and later on in the conversation, I'll talk about how it's actually the lot coverage is being reduced there. Under the safety regulations on the site triangle, that front porch is pre-existing for at least 100 years. So I don't know, counselors, if we need a variance, but that is, there's work being done on the front elevation, but basically it's like flooring and that type of thing. The basic structure that's there is in the site triangle today.
And that site triangle has been provided on the plan?
Correct. The first variance I'd like to go over is a FAR. And the whole intention of FARs is that people don't put McMansions on small lots to avoid large-scale homes on small lots. We're certainly not doing that in this case. We are increasing the FAR, but we're not, certainly not trying to create a McMansion on a little lot here. The underlying objectives of FAR, I believe, are met here, in that this structure, even though on 3 sides there's no change, the only place there's a change is in the area between the back of the building and the garage, which has a large open space, a lot of air, light, and the major emphasis is to add an elevator. So I believe the intention of the FAR is being met.
Can you state the standard for a floor area ratio
Yes.
variance?
With FAR variances, even though a D variance, which requires special reasons, in the New Jersey Supreme Court in Coveney versus Westwood zoning, an applicant for a FAR variance must only show that the site will accommodate the problems associated with floor area larger than permitted by the ordinance. And that even though D variance traditionally is thought of as use, that you're going to use something that you're not supposed to, there's two cases, a conditional use variance where you meet all the conditions is not a strong requirement, nor is this FAR variance not as strong as requirement as a D variance where you have to prove you're trying to put a commercial in a residential area. So I believe the architect has made that clear, and that the basic footprint of this building, except the bump out in the back, really for the air conditioners, for the just a small area in the kitchen, and for the elevators, certainly meet this criteria.
Any other reasons for meeting the criteria? Can you
Yeah,
kind of
the
go through
home
that?
has been there for 100 years. Put that in perspective, that was prior to World War I, it was prior to my mother and father being born, of which they're in heaven. So this is a number of years ago. I think it might even predate municipal land use law, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I had to check with the attorney on that. This statement is only to mention that it's consistent with the area. There was on the northwest corner of Reading in New York, a similar design structure that in 2019 had a 52% FAR and 48% lot coverage with no substantial footprint, no increase in parking demands, same number of bedrooms. This isn't like we're adding 4 bedrooms or adding, basically it's the same structure and almost reconfiguring it to more modern standards.
So in your opinion, this site can accommodate any of the issues associated with increasing floor area? greater than what
Absolutely.
the ordinance requires?
And one of the
Can you just-
simple,
Sir, can you go back to the thing you said about Reading and the 52% FAR? Are you saying we granted a variance for that?
yes. So I'm not saying that that's precedent to this, but I'm saying this is consistent with that in the neighborhood.
I don't know enough about it to say if it is consistent. What, is there a resolution or something?
Yes, I have it, Rich.
Counselor has.
Again, we're not, I know each application stands on its own,
Yes.
but we're just doing it for
Well,
comparison
but this
purposes.
one, I understand why you're saying it. You're saying in terms of massing, there's something similarly massed nearby. I just,
Okay. It's
I didn't see
resolution,
the circumstances that led to that. So whenever there's something mentioned, I'd like to read the resolution.
and this is the same corner, just one block east, or west, I'm sorry, at Reading and New York. It's Resolution 0328-2019, 50-foot lot,
Same house.
same exact
Same.
house, and floor area ratio in that case was approved at 50,
2%?
at 50.518, so close to 52%, and lot coverage was approved at 48.3%. And also a two-story garage. It's very similar to
That was added.
Does that have a 1 or a 2 or a 3 after that? Because I, 0328.
03-28-2019:3.
I have a question. The house is not being raised,
No,
and the height of the house is staying the same?
correct.
How is the attic height being raised?
There are existing dormers that are low, but the roof goes up higher.
Okay.
So we're going to rebuild the dormers and bring them up to align with the top of the roof. So we're not increasing the height of
Nothing's being
the
increased?
the roof, yeah.
Well, yeah, but in this one, the FAR was reduced.
Yeah, but I think they had already, were using the third floor already, so.
I just want my board to understand, it
Okay.
wasn't, it was the floor area was reduced in the application. But in terms of massing, I understand your point, but I do think that's a significant capital.
You can, I have extra.
Side note.
When was
I
that?
appreciate the fact that you took a look at that. Thank you.
2019.
When was that?
2019.
2008?
2019.
So,
My current partner.
Mr. Scheidt, you want to move on to lot coverage? And
Yes.
do lot coverage and lot size. I think you can take them
Yes.
kind of together.
Since there's a few numbers, I need to get the plans out. One thing is significant, a bigger picture here, the size of the building and the FAR and the coverage aren't inherently the problem. Inherently the problem, it's 5,000 feet instead of 7,500. So when you do all the math, you have a problem. If the lot were, I know the lot's not larger, but that's part of a challenge.
As I pointed out on my board before, though, that's why it's a ratio.
That's right.
Correct, exactly, understood. The main dwelling is, the lot coverage is 1082, it's going to 1204. That's 122 square feet, that's equivalent of 12 by 10. And I won't go through every numbers because some are 8 feet, 4 feet, that type of thing. Just highlight the major areas on the lot coverage. The garage was 305, it's going down to 231, so it's actually decreasing 74 square feet. The total lot coverage, when you summarize the total amount, it's at 2241, and we're going to 2,500. In that, a fair amount of the contribution is that, which was shown on Exhibit 3 on the proposed ground floor. That, we're adding 247 square feet, which prior was 152 square feet, and that is the pad and concrete area for the staging area and the elevator.
And that's underneath the deck, is that?
That's underneath the deck. Before that was more impervious. You can't have a dirt area working with an elevator. So that,
Can you just say that again?
the,
Not the whole thing, just how many feet are dedicated to the elevator pad, so I can write that in.
that
I thought you said 120 or something.
247 square feet are in that concrete pad area, if you want to call it that.
And your testimony is that that's dedicated to the elevator use?
Well, it's an elevator and the area around it. It's not all the elevator, but it's that area for the elevator and the
And
area
the ramp.
surrounding it, not including the ramp that has porous pavers. That also added area.
I think Ms. Lorenz just wants to add something to that.
I mean,
Question.
some of this area that we're talking about that's being added is the ramp, from the ramp to get to the elevator. And originally, underneath this deck, it had been dirt, and we're going to pave it underneath so that we don't get water coming in here. So that's an addition to, for the lot coverage.
So, Mr. Scheidt, can you just go through the hardship criteria?
Yes.
As well as the C2 balancing?
It's a lawfully existing structure and a contributing building in the historic district. We're restoring the building and increasing the lot coverage for the purpose of storage underneath existing decks, because an existing undersized historic home, it'll trigger, any increase will trigger a variance. We believe this is an extraordinary and exceptional situation uniquely affecting a specific piece of property or the structures lawfully existing thereon. where the strict application of the setback requirements or coverage requirements would result in peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties to the applicant and would be exceptional undue hardship upon the applicant.
And just clarify, this is storage as well as the area for the elevator and access to
Correct.
the elevator
Both.
under the decks.
And under the C2 balancing, purposes of zoning would be advanced in granting this variance to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of lands in the state in a manner which will promote the public health, safety, moral, and welfare. It was mentioned about the ADA accessibility and bringing the building into conformance that will hopefully last another 100 years, provide adequate light, air, and open space. The whole area between the garage and the ramp going down to the elevator is still a completely open area. To provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of agricultural, residential, recreational, commercial, and industrial uses, and open space, both public and private, according to the respective environmental requirements in order to meet the needs of all New Jersey citizens. MLUO, that's G. To promote a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques and good civic design arrangement. If I just add on this, I think it's a highly creative, highly efficient way to achieve this, that the architecturals are very attractive. And J, very important, to promote the conservation of historic sites and districts, open space, energy resources, and valuable natural resources of the state, and to prevent urban sprawl and degradation of the environment through improper use of land. And making this home suitable to retire in is, I think, more than admirable.
What about impacts?
Negative impacts? I don't see any. I looked at this project quite a bit, and I don't see any negative impacts to the public good or zone plan. And I was mentioned the other location. This is very much, the other's not precedent. I clearly understand that in law, but it's consistent.
So in your opinion, both lot area and lot coverage variances meet the criteria under C1 and C2?
Yes, they do.
Can you go to building setback and side yard?
Before you go to the next thing, can I just back him up for a second? I just want to get a little clearer testimony in my notes on the C1 lot coverage analysis. I thought you said something about the lot coverage is supported by the C1 and C2, and then you said something about C1, but I really didn't know what, I'm not disagreeing with it.
Okay.
I just want you to articulate for me, for the C1 standard, how is the lot coverage supported by the C1 standard? I didn't understand your testimony, I didn't write anything useful down.
Well, the increase in lot coverage, if I could go through the numbers. The increase in the main dwelling was only 122 feet. A substantial portion of the total increase between 2241 and 2500 is due to the area of impervious that's by the elevator and the most lower level, and the ramp going downward to get to that level from the ground level. And that creates a requirement for the increased lot coverage where we could improve it, as an example of the garage where we removed 74 square feet.
Is it,
For C1, can I try to help? I think it's the height of the house as an existing condition. The ramp you have to get to that height, and you believe the ramp serves that purpose, and the height of the house is actually an existing condition that creates the hardship that requires the ramp?
That's correct. The ramp, I guess
just let me
the
just-
ramp is going downward, has to go downward from ground level to meet the basement level to have the elevator go to the subsequent 2 floors.
Okay.
So
You have a-
because of that existing building, as was mentioned before, this is significant. This
I got it.
predates Sandy, but the people who designed it, it was fairly highly elevated above flood level.
I mean, I want you to focus on the fact that you have a lot that's pretty much already at lot coverage requirements, is that?
Correct.
So, and it's an historic building, so
Anything.
anything you do would trigger a variance for
if-
lot coverage, is
I-
that?
You know,
And-
I
and-
tried to say that, but if I didn't make that clear, I mean, if you added something, literally almost anything, because that building was predated zoning, the zoning law in New Jersey, MLUL, so literally anything you do to it is going to trigger, we would be here.
And that, in your opinion, creates the hardship under C1?
Absolutely.
Thank you, that's much clearer.
Okay.
If it was clear before, it just wasn't clear to me.
Yeah.
Maybe everyone else understood it, I'm sorry. I just want to get it down and give you full credit for it. Thank you.
So you're going to move on to the
Yes.
setback, and this is for the main house, so you have
Yes.
building setback and side yard setback. It's
Yes.
not the garage, so if you can elaborate on that.
The only place where we're really making any significant changes is in the rear of the property between, where the ramp is between the building and the garage. There are, as you mentioned, to highlight the numbers before, the installation of gutters going to eaves and expanding the roof line, it's still at the same distance, but those gutters have to be included in the setback. So we're literally adding inches. But the other side of that, that is the only really way to convey water to the subsurface drainage system, which every subsurface drainage system helps the drainage issue in this town. And it certainly helps the drainage issue on this property because the water comes off the eaves, literally on the property line between the Lords and their neighbor. So that's truly, I think, a gutter in a few inches. It's de minimis.
There's no gutters now?
No.
Okay.
No. And we really tried to look at other alternatives because of the aesthetics, and there really isn't any viable. You could make a gutter on the ground, but rip off the landscaping, and it's not a good way to move the water. The best to do is off the roof. And that's why they invented gutters, and we see all these commercials on TV about gutters.
Can you apply the hardship and C2 balancing criteria?
Yes.
to that one as well?
I'm sure the board is familiar with what I just said before. It's the same items that I mentioned before, and which are open air, light, space, good design. It's the same
And what
item.
about hardship? Same with respect to?
Same, yes. I could go through it again, but I don't want to
Okay.
be repetitive and waste people's time.
So, no negative impact?
No.
To the public good or?
Absolutely diminished. Actually, there's a positive impact. The only negative is a few inches of gutters. The positive impact is significantly improving the drainage
So in
on
your
the site and
opinion,
in general.
so in your opinion, the building setback and also the side yard setback variances meet both C2 and C1 criteria?
That's correct.
Can we now move to the garage, because we have a similar situation with 3 different variances? Can you kind of go through that as well?
Yes. I think the one key issue, I'll get the plans out again, is, wrong set of plans. The garage, as shown on sheet 2, is 305 feet. It's being reduced to 231 feet, which is a 74 square foot reduction in lot coverage. So the lot coverage on the garage is being reduced, as was demonstrated in Exhibit 5. It's just highly impractical on this lot to put the garage in the setbacks. You'd have to have a Mini Cooper or something drive across the lawn to go in the end. It's not really feasible. The other thing is it would destroy the beautiful crepe myrtle, which I believe is literally integral to the property. What are the getting ahead a little bit, one of the notes is that we're preserving all the landscape and the property, except possibly where the ramp is going down. There's a couple arborvitaes there. We'll try to move them. If not, they can be replaced. But the roses, the hydrangea, the crepe myrtle, which are just classic shore plantings, will be maintained. And to try to put the garage, that's where the garage has been for the last 100 years, and it looks like it's been there for 100 years. It's in fairly poor condition. A replacement or new garage will be put there. It'll be safer, it'll be more aesthetically pleasing, it'll be more structurally sound, and it will preserve that crepe myrtle.
So it creates difficulties, practical difficulties in putting it anywhere else mainly because of the crepe myrtle?
That's correct.
And that would, in your opinion, satisfy the hardship criteria?
Yes.
And what about the same purposes of zoning as previously articulated?
Yes.
So,
Historic district, open air and light, the same 5.
and as to the garage impacts, can you touch on that? Negative impacts?
It's an old garage in bad shape that potentially could be a fire hazard. You know,
So
replacing
replacing it
it
in its current place has no substantial detriment to the public good? or to
None
the
whatsoever. I
zone?
think there's the only upside. I don't see any downside. The alternative would be to leave that old it's replace it or leave that old structure there. And I
So-
think replacing it is a far more positive.
So in your
decision.
opinion, the garage setbacks also satisfy both the C1 and C2 criteria for
That's
variances?
correct.
That covers at least our testimony as to the variances. I know we have items in Mr. Hurlis's report, so we can go through that now, and we can entertain board questions as well.
Should I address it? Craig, you want to read your, just for the record, everything in your report we agree with.
I'll make it easy.
Yes.
Do you agree with all the comments in my report?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yep. And
We'll highlight those when I go through my review memo.
Are you going through your memo now, Craig?
If that's the board's pleasure. I
Is
wasn't,
there
actually-
anyone that wants to ask a question beforehand?
I have a few questions. If we could just return to the issue of lot coverage just for a moment.
Sure.
So the maximum that's permitted lot coverage is 40%. You're presently at 44.8%, and the proposal is to increase to 50% of lot coverage. So just if you could just sum up for us, what part of the proposal for increasing lot coverage is not attributable to the elevator and to the ramp?
would be that first number that I gave. Basically, I think the question is, how much is the building? The building is going from 1,082 to 1,204, 122 increase.
Well, what I'm getting at is is everything that you're proposing as far as for the lot coverage increase directly attributable? I know it's all part of the proposal, but you have indicated you're doing an improvement for the ramp. You need the ramp because of the elevator. You're adding the elevator as a major component of this proposal. What, if anything, from the lot coverage is not attributable to the elevator and to the ramp,
Well, as I-
including the mass of the building that's being
Yeah,
built?
The building is going from 1082 to 1204, which is 122 square feet. The garage is going downward from 305 to 231, decreased 74 feet. The generator, there's some things that are fairly small. Generator platform, 6 square feet. Do we want to?
How about the deck?
Well, that's what I mentioned, that area, 247 square feet is the under deck access area. That would be, there's a deck, there's a ramp, and then there's that concrete area that is the elevator and access to that as shown in,
Can we just have Craig talk about that? Craig, can you give your best answer to the gentleman's question?
So,
Based on your understanding.
I didn't understand sorry. I didn't understand the question exactly. But the deck over another
well, no, the concrete area that's underneath the deck by the elevator
right,
is the,
and that's going to count as 100% lot coverage.
one of the things
What's the square footage of that, Lou?
underneath is 247.
And what's the total increase in square footage? for
The
lot
total increase goes from 2241 to 2,500.
So that's 545 square feet that we have increased the lot coverage.
No,
No.
200,
You know,
go through that again.
Yeah. What may be helpful on sheet 2 of the plan, there's existing lot coverage calculations, which show, in other words, it isn't just one or two items, there's a whole host of items. Some are only like 4 feet, 6 feet. What I try to do is highlight
When you say the plan, do you mean
the engineering
variance
plans,
The
sheet,
variance plan?
yes,
Not the house plan, because we had both.
sheet 2,
260, I'm sorry.
sheet 2, item 14, shows existing lot coverage of 44.8. Sheet 3, under general notes 1, shows proposed lot coverage calc. My attempt was, in explaining it, rather than going through A through T, every item, because some of the items are, like the HVAC platform now is 4 square feet. It's going to 6 square feet, that type of thing. We could be here for quite a while. I tried to highlight the dwelling, the garage, and the underdeck, which are the larger items.
If I can
But
just,
every question you have is there.
based on these plans, let me just try to summarize
Yes.
this. There are two main components I think the question was geared to. The main dwelling increased from 1082 to 1204, and the under-the-deck space was 247. Those two items together actually exceed the total increase in lot coverage. Those increases were mitigated by removing some hardscape surfaces with pavers, getting rid of the large overhang in front of the garage, so there were many parts of this plan that actually decrease lot coverage in areas to kind of mitigate the increases which were necessitated by the underneath concrete area and the dwelling expansion. So we end up with actually reducing the two items that you had questioned about by the other mitigating
And the
factors.
net is 259
So total,
increase, of which, that's what I tried to mention, the three big components of that is the building of 122 plus, the garage of minus 74 negative, and the underneath the deck, which is somewhat substantial, and the ramp going down, which is permeable, which is 50%. But all the calculations, item by item, all the way down to 4 square feet, are laid out on sheet 2 and sheet 3.
So the net increase is 259,
yes, 259.
and at least, how much of that is the ramp and the concrete pad for work? 'Cause I think those numbers come.
More than that.
Right,
Yes.
I know.
Okay, can you
Yes.
summarize that, Lou?
Yes. The,
247 for the area under the deck.
yes. And the paver ramp is 54 square feet.
But
which
there's
is-
al-
which
but there's
is-
also
Which is, just,
leading
can
to the
can I finish,
foyer.
please? The paver ramp is item N in the general notes on sheet 3. help yourself.
Rich, did you get everything you needed?
What I got all of that is the net increase is 259, and the area under the deck is 247, and the paver ramp is 54 square feet. So, you know, it's, the net increase is 260, and there's about 300 square feet that is, according to the applicant, directly related to the accessing the elevator.
That's
And
accurate.
the garage had a negative increase, or
Well,
decrease.
there's a bunch of negatives, but I
Yes.
didn't get all those down.
Right.
Anyway,
It's-
The gist of your testimony is that the
Yeah.
elevator attributes most, if not for the elevator, they would meet the lot coverage under the current plan. That's their position.
Yes.
Question about the garage. In the HPC notice of conceptual approval that you received, under the conditions, it indicates that the proposal includes an HVAC system in the garage. Why is an HVAC system being included in the garage?
It was my recommendation that if you're having any kind of storage up above in the garage, that you need to have conditioned air. I have stored my suits and clothes, and after about a year, they're filled with green mold. Any kind of sails, Tom uses the upper portion, will be using the upper portion of the garage for his canvas sails. They will rot if the air is not conditioned.
Is that upper space included in the FAR?
No, the garage itself isn't going to
But
be,
it's conditioned space, isn't it? Isn't that included in the, should be included in the.
Not, it's not, one of the, if I can add, one of, actually, item 1 in the report, no habitable living spaces permitted above the garage. We added a note to that effect, I believe you added.
yes, we have a note, and there's a pull-down ladder.
Not habitable
What's the,
space.
what makes it not habitable? It's air.
Because we agreed not to have it habitable.
Well, a garage
It's
is
not
not
gonna be-
allowed to be
yeah.
habitable, and we're
And
not,
it's pulled
we're
down
not
stairs.
proposing it to be habitable.
So it's not habitable.
There's no staircase to
Yeah.
it.
We
No
agree to it,
staircase.
plus physically, a pull-down ladder is not traditionally a habitable space, but we're agreeing not to do that.
Is there any running water?
I'm sorry,
Is there running water to it?
no. There might be a hose bib outside for the garden. There's no running water inside the garage.
I have the same question that was raised. You said it was for storage only, and so then I would assume there's no storage, no water, no HVAC. I think unless you're willing to testify that there will never be habitable space in that garage, then I have difficulty with this.
We've already added a note to that effect. The architect has noted that.
Why don't we have Mr. Lord address
And
that?
Mr. Lord will
Yeah, I can
testify.
testify to that. We have no intentions of making that habitable space.
No water, no sewer?
No water,
No
no
sewer?
sewer.
Just air conditioning?
Air conditioning for, we are sailors, and Catherine's right, we like to store sails in air, temperature-controlled space.
Craig, are you allowed to have that in the accessory building or no? I know you look up the definition, that's what I'm worried
I'm
about.
looking up the definition of habitable area, and I think it's good to just go through that with the board. So the definition of habitable area reads, "An interior finished room enclosed by a floor, ceiling, and permanent weather-resistant walls, which has a minimum floor-to-ceiling height of 6.5 feet, which is intended primarily for human occupancy." That's it.
Middle portion
That's the definition,
goes above 6.5.
The last part, Craig, intended for human
which is intended primarily for human occupancy.
I think we addressed that with the testimony, that it's just for storage.
I understand. I'm not trying to persuade the board, I just want the applicant to understand. We get, people tell us all the time that they're putting this, we had someone who was putting a 10 by 30-foot room between two dormers in the front of the house, drywalled, air-conditioned, and said, well, it's not habitable space, we're storing stuff there. And I was like, really? So we had to be very careful about what, just because someone says we're going to use it for storage and not be in there, we have no way to know if it's a bedroom the next day. So this is in a garage, it's above, it's an attic, it's got a pull-down ladder. So I'm not saying it's the same thing, I'm just explaining to you why when we hear air conditioned, it gets everyone's attention.
Understood.
We also, just to note, this is a gabled roof. 3/4 of this space will be well below 6'6". I mean, the roof goes like this, so only in the middle is it going to be tall enough to stand.
What width of the garage would be the standing area, do you believe?
From the center out, I mean, the garage is only about, I don't have the exact dimension of the garage, but I would say that it's only about 6 foot.
Are there dormers on it?
That 6 foot,
Aren't there?
in the center of the garage, you could stand above.
Not on the sides, Rich. There's a
Not on the
dormer
sides,
in
they're
the
knee
front.
walls.
So you have about a 6-foot wide area where there may be standing
That's right.
height.
So let's go ahead with Craig's report.
You'll accept the condition that it won't be used for human.
Absolutely. It's already on the plans.
I understand that, but the people who buy the house don't look at the plans. Use it for what they want to use it.
With no
I know
intention
you've
to-
owned it a long time, but we can't go by that.
Yep.
Have all your questions been answered?
No, not yet. Is that garage, is that large enough to park a vehicle in? The reason I ask that is this. There's a 4-bedroom house, requires parking for 2 vehicles on the
So-
property.
So the garage counts for one, and then the driveway will count for the second parking.
Is there any other board questions? Okay. I'll highlight my review memo dated January 18th, 2024. This is a project located in the R2 Low Medium Density Residential District. You've heard testimony indicating what the applicant is proposing, so I'm not going to rehash that. I'm going to roll right into the completeness items on page 2 of 7. They're asked for waivers from providing the utility layout information and from providing a landscaping plan. We did support those waiver requests. We do have some landscaping comments further on, but, so we did recommend deeming this application complete. I'll detail the variances that are on page 3 of 7. So this is an existing single-family dwelling. It's a permitted use in the district. The lots, it is an undersized lot in the R2 district. 7,500 square feet is the minimum lot size where 5,000 square feet exists. They're requesting setback variances for both New York Avenue and Trenton Avenue. On the New York Avenue side, 25 feet is the requirement, 7.9 feet exists, 7.9 feet is proposed to the proposed improvements. On the Trenton Avenue side, 25 feet exists, 0.9 feet is the existing setback, 0.5 feet and 2.4 feet as measured to the gutter, so there's a correction in my report. And those are the variances.
I believe the .5 is, has a gutter too, so that would be reduced down to 0.
That's what he said. That's what he said.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's a 0-foot setback on that,
Because
okay.
of the gutter.
No, it goes from .9 to .5, right? I think you're
Yes,
right.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
You're,
We only corrected the one.
Yes, correct, I'm sorry.
Let's make sure we got it right, because going into resolution, we have to
Yes.
enforce it. Okay,
Excuse me, that was my mistake.
all right, 0.5 and 2.4, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so those are the setbacks there. Lot width, lot frontage meet the requirements, rear yard setback is met. This is a corner lot, so it only has one side yard setback requirement of 5 feet on the one side. 0.4 feet exists, 0.0 feet is proposed. Lot coverage requirement in the district has a maximum allowable of 40%, 44.8% exists, and that is being increased to 50.0%. The floor area ratio has a maximum for single-family dwellings in this district of .40, .394 exists, .503 is proposed. The applicant meets the parking standard. There's 4 bedrooms. They're required to have 2 on-site parking spaces. That is met, and that meets the residential site improvement standards. The new garage encroaches in all of the setbacks. The front yard setback requirement is 25 feet, where 20.2 foot is proposed. The rear yard setback of 5 feet, where 2.4 feet is proposed. The side yard setback of 4 feet, where 1.0 foot is proposed. It should be noted, and I didn't hear it in the testimony, that the location of that garage is at a location where it's at a location on a lot where 4 different lots come together, and all of those lots have garages in that vicinity. So the impact to light, air, and open space is relative to other garages and it's not impacting someone's dwelling. So if you look at Mr. Scheidt's plan, it illustrates that, but it just was not mentioned in the testimony. Okay, let's circle back to the big variances. Lot coverage. So the board has used that as a test. Is the lot being overdeveloped? So that's part of your consideration in the variances. Lot coverage has a relationship to stormwater. So in this case, one of the potential negative impacts would be stormwater. Mr. Scheidt has designed a stormwater management plan that addresses stormwater runoff consistent with the requirements. We found that adequate, but lot coverage is not just stormwater. It's a planning control that establishes how much you can do with your lot. So whether that ratio is a garage, parking, a pool, a patio, whatever. So that's the control. But it does have a relationship to stormwater. Floor area ratio. If you take a look at the master plan, when the floor area ratio recommendation was put in place with the master plan, it was a control on the massing of buildings. So that impact on the neighborhood and streetscape was a consideration, and that was why that floor area ratio controls was implemented and put into the ordinance. So you've heard testimony in support of that from the applicant. I just wanted to make sure that the board was aware of what those controls were. So I did have one other variance that isn't in that on the table of page 3 of 7. They mentioned whether it is or is not a variance. So there's a clear sight triangle requirement. This is a corner lot. At every street intersection in the city of Cape May, there's supposed to be a 20 by 20 clear sight triangle that's provided. The existing front porch is well within that, and it's said that they're reconstructing that. So I just had some concerns. I didn't realize that the building sat up so high, but the exhibit number 1 does a great job of showing how high that is. It's not really being changed or altered. I really don't have a safety concern with this. I think it's more of it doesn't meet the requirements of the code, so I think we should grant the variance. Whenever we have this type of issue, I always ask the engineer to provide the AASHTO site triangle. So, and I'll explain that. Our code site triangle requirements are just very crude. It's just plain 20 by 20. The AASHTO site triangle goes into a design criteria with the street geometry, right-of-way widths, where the stop bar is, whether there's parking, on-street parking or not, and it also looks at the speeds of the 2 streets that are being involved. So it's more widely accepted and more of a modern standard. So to justify that, I would just ask, Mr. Scheidt, did you take a look at that?
Well, happy to.
Do you see that there's going to be any safety issues with that intersection?
No, I think there's two key things. It's existed for a very long time. And the second thing is, it's not a high-speed traffic area. And that especially people that live in the area recognize these porches exist, so they drive accordingly. I think those are some of the key issues.
Yeah. In my 25 years of practicing engineering, I would say that there's not a safety issue being created here because of the street geometry, the width of the road, the width of the right-of-ways, and the location of the stop signs. I would just ask, as a condition of approval, that they put that AASHTO site triangle on the plan just to demonstrate and show, so that we have a document verifying.
We'd be happy to do that.
Okay. All right. Is there any questions with the variances? Okay. I'm going to roll right into the general review comments. These should be conditions of approval, and I believe the applicant has indicated that they will agree to this. So item 1, we already talked about. It should be a condition that there's no habitable living spaces permitted over the garage. Item number 2, they're taking advantage of the 50% credit for pervious paving materials. So they need to provide those construction details on the plan so we verify that those, that credit can be taken. Item 3, we just asked for some additional setback information be added to the plans. Item number 4 is our review of the grading and drainage plan, and we did find that plan acceptable. They also have to comply with Chapter 525, the minimum stormwater management and grading requirements, and that remains a condition of approval. Item number 5, there is an existing landscaping and vegetation plan that has been provided that shows the preservation of trees. We would just ask that a note be provided on the plan indicating that all vegetation will remain, and if not, then we would ask for a new vegetation plan.
Craig, if I may, just a reminder as well, because I know the applicant, they've talked about the tree that's on their property, and they're certainly going to be taking steps to take care of that. But there's a tree right on almost the property line as well. And I think in Shade Tree, they mentioned about
Shade Tree mentioned it, right?
all trees. So just as a point of emphasis, it's not just the trees that's on their property, but particularly since it's right next to where the garage is going to be taken down and rebuilt, steps need to be taken to address all trees. And I mention that because that's something that just came up before City Council, even just this week, where someone had mentioned a project similar to this, and on an adjacent property, they ended up losing a significant tree as a result of a construction project on a neighboring property. So that needs to be addressed by this construction as well.
Correct. The Shade Tree Commission made similar recommendations, so we'll incorporate their requirements. It should be noted that the planning board just took a look at the pending ordinance that clarifies the tree requirements within the city. So I know that that's pending. I don't know whether it's been passed for second reading yet. But
I believe it passed on,
Okay.
Tuesday.
right, so the next month we'll be enforcing that. All right. Item 6 is our standard condition that they have to post an inspection escrow, and the certificate of occupancy is tied to the acceptance of those improvements. The applicant is required to comply with the requirements of the Shade Tree Commission, Fire Department, and Public Works, and we did receive copies from the Fire Department. They recommended approval dated 2/2/24. The Public Works Department recommended approval 2/1/24, and Shade Tree Commission recommended approval with the following conditions. There appears to be no removal of existing trees on lot planned for renovation. Care should be made to protect these and existing street trees on Trenton and New York Avenue during construction. I'm going to ask that they have to, and that date was 2/8/24. And then we did also receive notice of conceptual approval from the HPC. So we would like to see, that wraps into item number 9. We have to get evidence of final HPC approval. I'll jump back up to 8, the standard condition that they have to comply with all other necessary state, county, and local approvals. Item number 10, they have to comply with the affordable housing requirements. And finally, item number 11, should the board grant approval, they're required to revise all the plans to satisfy the conditions and any conditions that the board sets, and submit those to the board engineer for review and approval. That's a summary of my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions the board has.
We can open it up now to anyone within 200 feet of the property.
I'd just like to be able to see the people I'm speaking to respectfully. Good evening. I live within 200 feet. My name is Patricia Gray Hendricks. I live at 106 Trenton Avenue. I've lived there for 39 years, and one of the first 2 people that met me on September 6th, 1985, was Jack and Judy Lord welcoming me to the neighborhood. And that was just the beginning, because they really and truly made me one of their Cape May kids. At the time, I was about 32 years old, and now I find myself being the senior to Tom Lord and the rest of the Lords. Through those years, Judy and Jack were always there. The story about the crepe myrtle tree is sad, but yet Judy and Jack turned that in grief into something that was much more memorable, because the beach chairs that you see for handicapped in this city, which have been a joint effort of the city over the years, and now the generosity of the DeSatnick Foundation, was started by Judy and Jack Lord, because they had wanted so much to bring that little girl to the beach, and they understood how, even though she was young, it was difficult. But they wanted others to experience that beach. And over the years, I saw Jack Lord delivering Meals to Wheels, free meals, the meals to those that were homebound. Judy always doing things for people at the church. These were people that were an example to me. And at this point, beyond that, I feel as though wearing another hat as a real estate broker, as a former planning board member, as a present member on the Cape May County Planning Board, in addition to looking at these plans, I also spent time thinking about the due diligence that I would want in any plan, whether I knew the Lords or not. And I find it exemplary that, for example, the condensers are in compliance with the new FEMA ordinance. It's going to make it much easier for them, and it's a feather in the cap in this city to have someone take seriously the new FEMA ordinances. I also feel strongly that this house and the streetscape will remain the same, and that house sits there majestically, and all they're going to do is dust it up and make it so that it can go that next 100 years. As a neighbor, it's important to me to see that the stormwater ordinance is fulfilled. And they have done that as well, because so many times you hear someone worried about the construction or the renovations that are going to alter the situation for their family's house with regards to drainage. As a safety factor, the garage, mine included when I have a 1915 house. It's important for a garage that close
as the engineer pointed out, to the neighboring properties where there are so many garages back to back, that it be brought to the present standards, and that would maintain with the firewall. I also think that when people move here, they forget that if they're putting groceries in from their car to their house going about, when you live here year-round, gutters are really important. So I think that even though gutters are adding to something, it's kind of dressing it up and making it very, very practical. I also find that having storage space that's conditioned for healthy storage is important. Any one of persons that go and look at a storage center in Cape May County, if you have climate-controlled storage, it costs you in excess of $300 a month. Calculate that over the next 20 years. So I think that we all want our things, whether they be our outdoor things or even shifting to be able to store clothes, as their architect pointed out, are important. Beyond all that family lore and beyond all that due diligence that I point out, I think the one thing that is important to me is the longevity. And that longevity, you know, we talk about Cape May, we talk about the fact that, you know, earlier generations grew up in communities where everybody knew one another and where neighborhood kids played together and where families were close by. We know that in our town, the typical American family structure and the nature of our neighborhoods is changing. This is an opportunity to reinstate some longevity in a small little neighborhood that I've lived in for 39 years that has mostly those of us that are staying here year-round, and we're not renting our houses out, and we are a true neighborhood. And the other thing that's important to me, and I've heard it several times, and I know it's the reason why I get listings and I sell listings, is because people can't age in place. You know, this application in front of you is a thoughtful approach that allows the Lords to remain in their own home in the same community that their family has maintained for all these years and allows them to grow older. You know, there's all healthcare issues that we all don't know what we're going to have, but somehow they are moving forward with proactive steps to create a home, and I want them to know that they have a supportive environment in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Hendricks, can you return to the podium for a moment? Do you swear the testimony you gave is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. I should have known better.
I should have known. You did everything else so right. You said your name and you gave your address, and I just skipped right through it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sir, are you within 200 feet? I am. Okay.
So do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, please state your name, spell your last name, and give me your address.
Okay. My name is Jens Fogg. Last name is spelled F-O-G. I'm here with my wife, Leslie.
I lied. Can you give me the spelling of your first name, too?
Yes, it's spelled J-E-N-S. And we live at 108 Trenton Avenue, directly across from Tom and Gigi. We've lived there for about 3 years, although we've been in Cape May a lot longer than that. We live in Village Green and built a new house at 108 Trenton.
Excuse me one moment. Can you make sure the green light's on? Press if.
Oh.
Thank
Is
you.
that better? All right. Should I start over? Did you get all that before?
Okay.
You did? Okay, great. So my wife and I, we support this project. We think it's a very careful approach to what they want to do. I think they've tried really hard to minimize the impact, but at the same time, give them the things that they need. You know, I recognize the challenge that the board may have in considering that it's a smaller lot, but again, I think it's a very thoughtful approach, and my wife and I are in full support of it. We have an elevator in our house. I had back surgery last year. I know how important it is to have it as you're getting older, and so I understand full well why Tom and Gigi would want to do that. Tom didn't mention it, or I don't think it's been mentioned, but he has a brother and a sister also living in Cape May. They're fully committed to the area. I know that's no guarantee that they own the house forever and ever, to your point, but they've shown a commitment to this town for a long time. So again, we're in full support of this project, and I hope you approve it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. I just had to speak for yourself, John Alden, moment. I've known Tom for 54 years this year, and I'm very excited, living across the street from him, to know that he and Gigi are planning to live here year-round. I could be wrong, but I think I remember that our census from the previous, whenever it was, 2010, I forget the year. Anyway, we've decreased, our population has decreased in Cape May City. And I just want to say, every single person who changes from a summer home to a year-round home is a blessing for Cape May City. So I completely support the project. I have no reservations whatsoever. Thank you.
Anyone else within 200 feet? Anyone beyond 200 feet? Okay, closing to the public. Any members of the board have any other comments, questions?
I want to point out Exhibit 7. Oops. Exhibit 7 is an awesome illustration of why we have stormwater issues in this neighborhood. You can see all the houses in the background are along the spine of Washington Avenue, and you can see between there and the beachfront was all meadows. It was all filled in and developed. So, thank you for that.
That was from, Peter Shields was the developer, and that's the inn in the front, so.
Yeah.
One picture.
Yeah. If I can just wrap up, Rich, if I may, or Mr. Chair. I mean, I think the testimony was supportive of this application. I think we've established that this is not a massing of buildings that was what the FAR ordinance was intended to prevent. You know, when I look at the elevator area and I look at just basically refitting that third floor to make it more livable, you look at the square footage of those areas and that floor area ratio. I know the variance request is for 50%, or 50.1%, 51%. But when you take those areas out, it really brings it down into the low 40s, but we're not putting that as what our variance request is. From a lot coverage standpoint, I think all these improvements that increased lot coverage beyond what the total lot coverage increase is, they've been mitigated by a lot of the efforts to reduce lot coverage in areas by putting paver surfaces in, by eliminating some hardscape areas, and by eliminating the overhead area on the garage. So I think the setback variances are what they are. Most of them are because gutters have been added, and all those gutters added an extra 4 inches, which created all variances because we have pre-existing non-conforming setback issues. The one thing that struck me when Tom said, well, we're sailors and we keep our sails there, and all I can think about, and it's kind of a personal thing for me, all I think about is the Cape May Corinthian Yacht Club when I think of Tom and his family. They've been such an integral part of that over the years. They've done so much for Cape May, for the sailing program, cleaning up the harbor, and my kids were part of the sailing program, And Jack was just a great guy, and Tom and his brothers just followed suit. So on a personal note, I wanted to add that. So with that, we would respectfully request that the variances be granted as presented. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'll give two elements of instruction. You know the standards to apply, so I won't repeat all those. So the D variance is the floor area ratio variance is always the tricky one for us. The courts have given us virtually no guidance on what to do. I know the one case we speak about has to do with a supermarket and a big development that has really no application to a house, but that's the only case they've given us. So you have to decide whether the site can accommodate the problems created by deviation from the floor area ratio. And, you know, sometimes that has to do with drainage and things like that, but it's also massing. And I know I can tell what the board is struggling with. It's, the elevator is a great idea, but are they doing things beyond the elevator that make the massing a problem? Could they do the elevator without having the other problems that are associated with it? That's what's on your minds, and that's a decision you have to make. That's why you get the big bucks. They've done their best to explain to you, you know, there's an elevator. I have some questions about elevators and floor area ratio, by the way.
I don't think they should be.
The whole elevator, you can only occupy one floor at a time, the rest of it's empty. Now, but for terms of massing, it does create more space, but there's plenty of things that create space that don't count towards floor area ratio. So I have some real, you know, you could write a thesis on elevators and floor area ratio.
I didn't realize they counted it more than once. I typically only count it once.
Yeah, so.
Same thing with a stair tread. You can only occupy it on one floor, so like it doesn't count.
Yeah, so I think their number might be a little lower than they've asked for. So the elevator is a squirrely thing, and then the elevator adds some space next to it, and then their argument is, well, for architecture, you don't want this big square thing sticking out of the back of a house, so they've tried to even it up as best they can. The upstairs, they tried to justify by saying it's already there mostly now, so it's adding more space, but it's not adding more usable space in the house. It's just the ceiling's higher and it's more like a real bedroom. Throwing a bathroom up there, that might, that's a thing. But I share all this with you, not because you know I don't vote and I try not to persuade you, but I do think it's important that we distinguish why we might grant some floor area ratio variances and why we don't. Because there's people who come in at 41% and we say no all the time. So if you're going to grant one, I think you really have to, you know, think about and explain why you're doing it. This is also, you know, I have found that some of the times when you grant floor area ratios, it is on the older big houses on smaller lots. And it's usually in the rear of the house. We did that on maybe Hughes. It was kind of like a donut in the back of an old house. The one they said they were going to, they're bringing the kids in the neighborhood, it was going to be great, and then they put it up for sale 6 months after they built up that house. So, you know, but that's another example of a big house that fills a lot of the lot, and then they're kind of doing something to the house and it triggers a floor area ratio variance. So, you know, you have to give some consideration that they're starting with a big house on a small lot that's 100 years old. So whatever they do to it's going to exceed some numbers. You know, they're not starting at zero. They're not building a new house. But I do understand that to put in an office and a bathroom and all those things that aren't the elevator. So that's what you guys are trying to do, and you have to decide if those things beyond the elevator are too much massing for that size lot. And, you know, that's your discretion. That's what you do. That's what you get. That's why you're on the board. So there's other variances, the side yard variances. I'm not telling you to disregard those, but it's an existing structure. They're putting on gutters. I think it'd be arbitrary and capricious to deny a side yard variance for a 100-year-old house because they're putting on gutters that mitigate stormwater. So that would be, you know, a difficult sell. The garage is the garage. You heard the testimony. Mr. Monzo, I'm going to let you pick your poison. I generally have everything voted on all together because the application is usually presented holistically, right? So they want the full credit for the whole application. Therefore, I vote on it all together. You need 5 out of 7 for the whole project. If you ask me to, I will consider voting on these separately. The garage separately, because the floor area ratio issues that they might struggle with, the garage is truly separate from that, right? That doesn't impact floor area ratio, does it?
Does not.
So, you know, I'll let you vote on that separately if you want and do just a majority on that. I really have trouble separating the lot coverage from it, because a lot of the lot coverage justified by the elevator and, the whole project, the whole big building, so I think that should be all voted at once. And giving you a lot coverage variance without approving the building doesn't help you much anyway. So if you want me to vote the garage separate, I will, or you just want everything together, you need 5 out of 7, so tell me what you want to do.
Well, we need 5 out of 7 for the floor area ratio
Right,
variance, and the others.
yeah, for the,
just need-
for the garage, you need 4 out of 7, so.
And for the house, too.
For the lot coverage, you do for lot coverage, but I thought you justified the lot coverage by the house you were building, so I generally think you should vote on that altogether. And giving a lot coverage variance without a house design being in there, I wouldn't do that. It doesn't make sense, because then you could put anything there and it'd be lot coverage. So I think that has to go together. So in my opinion, I'll separate the garage from it if you want, but the rest, I think it has to be voted together.
Okay,
Okay?
that's fine.
All right, so, let's do the, what we'll do is we'll vote on the, what do you want to do first?
We'll do the house.
Okay, so we'll vote on the house first, if that's okay with everyone. So the motion that I recommend being made, but how you vote is up to you, is a motion to grant the variances 1 through 6 and 10 on the list on page 3, which to my understanding is everything but the garage, to grant the house project they proposed with the adjacent ramp that impacts coverage, that whole thing all together, floor area ratio. I remind all of you that as you vote, they require 5 out of 7. So if 3 people vote no, the project is denied. Doesn't mean they can't get back with a different project, so, and the applicant understands that, but I'm just saying that would mean that you're voting no. So the motion is to grant variances 1 through 6 and 10 with the conditions outlined by the board engineer, 1 through 11, which the applicant is not objected to, including, well, number 1 has to do with the garage. We'll get to that later. So that's the motion I recommend being made, but how you vote is up to you. And I would ask that, particularly if you're voting no, and I'm not taking issue with voting no, I'm just saying if you're going to vote no, please articulate your reasons. The reason I say that is because there hasn't been an objector, and there hasn't been contrary expert testimony. That doesn't mean you can't vote no. I think your vote no would be within your discretion, in my opinion, but I do need you to explain the reasons why you're doing it, so that if I have to write a resolution for the reasons, I at least have, I can draw from the existing record, but I also like to draw from your comments as well. So explain the reasons why you're voting no. And you can explain reasons why you're voting yes as well, but particularly if you're voting no, I ask you to help me create a more defensible and legitimate resolution by doing that, okay? Any questions from anybody? All right, so that's the motion I recommend you make, and how you vote is up to you.
Okay, can we have someone make that motion? Okay, motion by Mrs. Notch,
I'll second. Second.
seconded by Mr. Venuto.
Thank you. Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
No, and I believe it's because of the lot coverage going up to 50%, and also the fact that I live in a historical house that's 132 years old, 3 stories high, and we didn't have an elevator, and we are aging in place for the last 54 years. So I don't believe it's necessary.
Mr. Walsh?
I'm going to vote yes. I'd like to say, when I first saw the 0 setback for the side, that number really jumped out. But knowing that it's gutters, that's going to help correct a drainage problem between this house and the neighbor, and there's just rainwater splashing down, it's going every place. And also where the garages are set in the back corner, there's 4 garages, as Craig said, that are touching each other. That's still going to allow them a good expansive space behind the house. So it's still a good-sized yard, so it won't look too intrusive. So I vote yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Bodnar?
I'm voting yes also. But my reasons are as follows. I find this to be a small lot. That in and of itself is just a factor, but the fact that the residence that is there, the dwelling that's there, predates the land use ordinance, to me, is a significant factor. Other factors, that the floor area ratio to add being increased to add the elevator and the ramp, I believe justify voting yes and justify the variance. The other increases that are being proposed that would increase the floor area ratio, I think, as well as the lot coverage, I think they're small and they're incidental, and I was looking to see if there was a way to somehow cut those out, and I didn't necessarily see that being cut out in the residence itself or the dwelling itself. I also find significant that the massing of the residence is almost within the existing footprint, and I think there's something compelling about the design of the house and the fact that it is very close to that present footprint. Significant to that, the building height is not just conforming, but it's less than the max that's allowed. I think there's been a significant issue with houses that are trying to exceed what the height is permitted, and I think the fact that this does not exceed that is a factor that makes the house look less massive in that way as well. So those are my reasons for voting yes.
Mr. Venuto?
I'm going to vote yes as well, and reason being, I'm often very concerned about the floor area ratio, especially this one that's essentially 10% higher than what the max would allow. However, looking at the project, I don't feel that the development intensity is all that high, and it seems like everything kind of fits into place on the property. So that's the reason why I'm voting yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes, I'm voting yes. It's a very nice design, and I like the fact that you haven't tried to raise the entire house up, as so many are doing now, which just makes that look so massive. And the fact that most of the increase is this elevator, and I wouldn't mind having one in my own home. So, yes, thank you.
Okay. Application passes. Thank you. Good job.
The garage?
Is that it? Oh, the garage. Okay. Well,
Oh, you want that,
sorry.
too?
Nope, no garage for you. All right, good. The motion I recommend for the garage is variances 1,
7 to 9, I think.
what'd I do? 7, oh yeah, 1 is the condition. 7, 8, variances 7, 8, and 9, with the specific condition that and this is how I'm going to write it, no habitable living space is permitted over the garage. There is no running water on the second floor, no stairs, only a pull-down ladder, and no sewer line. Okay?
Fine.
That's the motion I recommend be made subject to that condition along with the others.
Okay, can we have that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Zetzger,
Second.
second by Mr. Ledwin.
Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch? Yes. Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Bodnar?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we need a motion to approve the payment of the bills.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Walsh, seconded by Mrs. Notch. Okay.
Mr. Ledwin?
I have a question.
Okay.
I have difficulty approving something I know nothing about. I guess my question is, if this is these are escrow accounts, correct? For the most part?
Yes, for the most part, yes.
Yeah. So so the question, Richard, is why isn't the CFO approving these rather than us? I'm voting to approve something I know nothing about. I know that this.
So,
I agree with you.
can I answer?
Well,
I'll answer that question.
Now, listen, there's two different parts of it, okay? The part about the escrows, I don't really think that you have the information necessary to vote competently on. Guys, we're still in session, if you could. But as to the monies that are spent on non-escrow activities, charges for board, charges for board meetings, charges for resolutions, and if there's litigation, well, a little bit of prep for the meeting. I usually put like a half hour to prep reading the application. And then litigation expenses, okay? It's appropriate for you to see what you're spending on litigated matters pertaining to the board. So if things were out of hand, you could say, wait a minute, there's 9 resolutions here, we haven't had a meeting in 6 weeks, what's going on? So it's appropriate for you to see that. So on one hand, on that stuff, it's appropriate for you to see it and approve, and say, oh, that makes sense, and okay it. You're not really spending money, but you're saying that those charges seem legitimate to you. So I think that's the purpose of it.
And I have no problem with that. What I have problem with is some of the entries here that I have no knowledge of whatsoever, and I'm approving it. I mean, somewhere along the line, we ought to take this up with whoever. I understand that Karen put this back on the agenda because one of her superiors wanted it on the agenda. But I think there ought to be a differentiation between those things that we have control of or say yes or no on, and those things that we know nothing about.
I agree with you. I don't know that this board has spending authority. I thought,
So, would you guys like to make a motion that we bring it to the city manager, that you would prefer not to do this?
I'll talk to him. I mean, I'm going to talk to him, and he's going to call me about this open to the public thing,
Okay.
because I got to deal with that. If we're going to do, I don't like the opening to the public, because zoning boards are quasi-judicial boards, meaning you're supposed to be very careful that you only base your decision on what's presented to you on the record under, I'm supposed to regulate what comes in, right? So hearsay, the opportunity for cross-examination, all that. If someone comes in, and then I've seen other towns where they say they limit it to things that aren't on the agenda. Well, that's nice, but that doesn't make any sense to me either, because people know what's coming, or they're going to comment about things that have happened. So when they come in and say, oh, that pool on 25th Street that they're putting in, that's outrageous. And then 2 weeks later, we get an application for a pool, and it just gums up things. Now, if someone wants to come in and say, zoning board, I think you're doing a terrible job. I think you're granting too many variances. Okay, I guess there should be an opportunity for the public to kind of say that. I think they should say that to the town council, but if they say it to us, I could see where someone wants to say there should be some public opportunity to comment on the good things we do, the bad things we do. They don't like our fees, stuff like that, which again isn't our decision either.
Can I say something? So Mr. Bodnar was present when I was approached with this question, so I don't want to put, bless you, I don't want to put Mr. Bodnar on the spot, but maybe he could illuminate what it is that Mr. Van Walsum wanted to say to the board, if you feel comfortable. You don't know?
I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
That would,
Okay, that's why I thought I would ask, in case you knew what comment he felt we should hear. So
if we're,
okay.
I don't think we should do it, but if we're going to do, but I'm not trying to hide from comment. It's just, I'm supposed to protect the record. It's one of my primary jobs. Take notes, protect the record. They're the two things I'm supposed to do. And so if we're going to do it, then the agenda's going to say something very specific, that you can make comments, but not about any specific piece of property or about any particular application, because I just don't think it's appropriate to hear that. I mean, if someone comes in and they come in and they say, that garage on 10th Street looks too close to the side yard, it needs a variance. We're not supposed to hear that stuff. Like, that's not appropriate. That's not on the record. That's not what we do. We're not enforcement. So that's why it's just almost nothing they can say that's appropriate for us to hear as a zoning board, in my opinion. So that's why I'm not in favor of it. So, maybe we could do something where they could submit a written question to me, and I could look at it first and say, no.
Maybe at the end of the meetings, rather than at the beginning of the meeting.
It doesn't
that had
matter.
potential to
They
set
can
it
say
off.
just horrible things at the end. They can say, they'll say things about things that are coming up. I know because I have another township that does it, and it makes me crazy. West Cape May has a good of the order, or privilege of the floor, and I say, I don't like this. And and they do it, and then inevitably someone comes up and they start to complain about the application we just heard, or something that's gonna be happening, and I'm like, well, the difficulty there is that's a combined board. So I feel like I have to allow it because it's both a planning board and a zoning board. So I kind of let it happen, but I'm just kind of always like stopping people. So, but we're a zoning board, so I kind of want to take a stand on that a little bit. All right?
Thank you.
Well, I'd be more comfortable if you'd asked the question of whoever, the city manager, whoever determined that this should come to us. And
This is on-
again, I don't have a problem
Payment of bills, right.
Yeah, I'm talking
paying the
about
bills. If it,
No, I understand.
if it's
I understand why
applicable.
he wants to see it, but I understand why I wouldn't vote on something I'd abstain. You don't know if the charges of Craig's escrow are appropriate. I'm sure they are, but you don't know that.
Well, that's right. So it really shouldn't come before us. It's my feeling.
You don't even have the bills.
Well, I said at the very beginning that I have all the bills, that anyone can come see me to see the bills. I have the bills. I have all the bills.
I understand, but that's not what a board member should be voting on.
Okay.
It's not even within their expertise to know Craig is doing appropriate inspections. It's not something the zoning board does.
Craig did say that other boards do it. Is that true?
Very few.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, Rich, for bringing it
They
up
can
with the
also be
manager.
given- They can
That'd
also
be
be given
great.
the information without voting. They can look at it, and if they have any questions, they can ask them, but to ask someone to vote on, when they don't have the necessary materials to do it, it's just dangerous business.
It's just a lot of paper, and that's why I don't send all the bills, because there's a lot of paper. I'm trying to save a tree. But do you guys want to vote on this tonight or not? Should I
Can we table it?
finish the call or not? Finish the roll call on this motion and second?
I just, so much of it.
Why don't we table it, Rich, until you find out from,
What
Or you're-
this extra process is doing is delaying payment.
for you folks.
It's extending the period, like, so there's already lead time when we submit bills, or whether, and he has to get it to do it. So now.
Yeah, I've had them since February 8th
With this board endorsing it before
and 6th.
city council will approve the bill.
Craig is politely asking you to vote on it.
Yeah, so I'm just
Yeah.
saying that, if you
Well, I-
table it to next month, and that
Yeah.
Well, could we,
Vote on it
could,
with reservation.
puts
Yeah,
it back to payment.
I was going to say, Norm's right. I mean, my thought was the same thing. Why do we vote? I don't even know what these bills are about. Having said that and agreed with him, you've done this forever, it seems? So no?
This is brand new.
Oh. Okay, well, so am I relatively, so I didn't realize it. Oh. Because I was about to say, if this is something we've been doing, why are we deciding now we're going to table it? If that's the case, then I'm back with Norm. It's like, why are we approving something that we don't, maybe we shouldn't even be approving it to begin with?
I think we've done
We
it the
got
last.
powers. Somebody else should
Yeah,
approve.
I think we've done it the last 4 or 5 meetings. I mean, one thing we could do is, I mean, it is a good issue, or we could consider that we're satisfied with the practice that we've been doing up to now and voting on it, but ask that Mr. King talk with someone to address it
works.
for the future. I mean,
I don't have a problem with that. I don't want to delay there, because they've got cash flow problems in their organizations too. But on the other hand, I think, Rich, you ought to raise this issue.
I admit I didn't know it was delaying. I know it's-
Raise the issue that if there's applicable bills or payments that apply to us, then I think we ought to vote on it. If it doesn't apply to us, it comes out of an escrow account, somebody in the front office, the CFO or somebody ought to be looking at that to make sure that the escrow account's paid.
Yeah, my bills are more appropriate for you to review than Craig's. I don't know how you could possibly know
Yeah, mine are.
Craig's are accurate.
So you may see bills from me that are pre-application before they've been deemed incomplete, and you won't even notice the name. You wouldn't even recognize the
Right.
name or address because they're incomplete and they haven't been scheduled for a board meeting. Then I do, compliance reviews, and then after that, there's inspection to make sure that they did everything the way you guys approved it. So there's 3 layers in my reviews.
Yeah, mine are different. I don't care if you vote on mine or not. It's appropriate for you to know how much you're spending on legal services. It doesn't matter to me, because you'll understand, my bills, the way my bills work are, I don't send a bill until after the resolution is submitted to Karen. So there's no applications that I bill for really that you don't see. There may be one or two minor things if I get a question in the middle of the month or something with someone, and I only bill $150 an hour, so it's like a $30 charge or something. And then litigation, you should know how much you're being billed for, because you're the ones who decide whether to litigate it. So it's appropriate for you to make that decision as part of your analysis. So my bill, I just always wondered about Craig's bills, because he's doing things that have nothing, that you have not even jurisdiction over, compliance reviews. That's not what you do. So I don't know why you would be asked to vote on that. My stuff, it's fine, I don't care.
Okay, so we'll vote to approve tonight's bills,
Okay.
so we can expedite them.
Get it done,
And
but then.
then
So we had a
see if we
motion.
can change something.
Okay, we had a
Get it done,
motion.
but Then raise the question, why are we doing this to
You
begin?
need a motion?
We have a motion, we have a second. So I'm going to call the votes, and you vote how you feel.
Right.
Okay, so Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Bodnar?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes,
Thank you, everyone.
and we just need a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Did you approve?
Okay, all in favor?
Oh, hold on.
We don't have them.
There's no minutes on it.
Wait, do we have something else? Did someone want, I'm sorry. What- Mr. Bodnar, did you want to speak before we
No.
adjourn?
No, thank you.
Are you
No.
sure?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
She couldn't get them done in time, and so they'll be next time or so.